Hello, happy Christmas, and welcome to a new edition of Cracking the Cryptic. Now, I was going to try this puzzle on Christmas Day, but I left myself quite short of time, and I was worried it would take me too long, because it's a variation on Sudoku I've never done before. And you can see it's a beautiful, beautiful looking puzzle. I wanted to give myself time to finish it, so I've decided to wait until today, where I've got a good hour to record this video, so even if it's very difficult, hopefully I will get it done. Now, this puzzle is about 5 years old. It's been recommended to us by Christoph Seeliger, the fantastic constructor from Germany, and it's been made by two chaps from the Netherlands who, if you follow the channel, you might recognise their name, Arvid Baars and Richard Stolk. And a few years ago they produced a sequence of puzzles leading up to Christmas, culminating in this one. And Christoph said it's rather special, so I'm really looking forward to trying it. Now, as usual with Cracking the Cryptic, if you want to have a go, do click on the link under the video and you'll be able to play the puzzle as well. Now I'm going to talk through the rules. Now, as I say, these are bonkers. This line in the middle of the grid forming a Christmas tree, well, this needs to be a palindrome in the finished solution. So what does that mean? Well, that means that, let's look at this end of the line. If we've filled in this square with an 8 for some reason, that would mean that there would have to be an 8 at the other end of the line. And if we made this square a 6 by some logic, then the fourth square from this side would also have to be a 6. So in the finished solution, this line must be a palindromic line. Now, that's a fairly unique type of restriction, but let me talk to you about these arrows outside the grid. Now, I think this is a type of Sudoku that's become popular in quite recent years. So when I was competing in the World Championship, I don't remember this variation coming up, and it's called Rossini. And what these arrows indicate is, let's look at this arrow for instance. It only refers to these three squares, and these three squares must increase in the order of the point of the arrow. So this square would be the smallest of these three squares, this would be the middle-sized one, and this would be the largest one. And the same goes for the columns. So in this column here, this would have to be the smallest, this would have to be the biggest, and vice versa if the arrow points downwards. So in these three squares, this square would have to be the largest, this would be the smallest, and this would be in the centre. Now you can see there are no given digits in this Sudoku. It is an absolute thing of beauty. This apparently has a unique solution, and I am now going to try and give myself a Christmas treat by finding it. And the problem is I have no clue how to start. Well, I'm going to start up here simply because there's so many arrows in this. There's arrows and palindromes affecting this 3x3 block. So let's think about what we might know. And where I'm going to focus my attention is on extreme numbers, so the 1s and the 9s, because I can't see how anything else is going to be deducible. 1s and 9s must be the most restricted number, partly because in any where there's an arrow, none of those three squares in this box can be a 1 or a 9, because obviously if there's a 1 or a 9 in here, there's no way this arrow can be correct. Oh, something I should have mentioned as well is that, in case it matters, if a row or a column has no arrow, that means it cannot be one of these arithmetic sequences. Okay, so that is very important. It's a negative constraint, and that may be useful too. So if there's no 1s and 9s in these three squares, so let's look at 9s. Where can the 9s go in this box? It could be here, here, and here. These are the only positions 9s can go into. Now, only one of these is on the palindrome. It's this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The 7th number from this direction. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now that is nice. This square, look, cannot be a 9, because if this was a 9, this red arrow breaks, because the this square needs to be the biggest of these three squares. In fact, looking at this box, this has to be the 9. We'll come back to that. So there's no 9 in this square, so the 9 is in either of those squares up here. And down here, I just noticed if we look, the arrows in these 3 cells are all going the same way. So these 3 squares must be the biggest numbers in these rows, and the biggest number of all of these must be this one here because of the red arrow at the bottom. So none of these squares obviously could be a 9 because of the green arrows. The 9 is in one of those squares and the red arrow makes it this square. And now look over here. Let's ask where the 9 can go in this box. Obviously it can't go in those squares because of the 9 here. It can't go in these 2 positions because of the green arrow, and it can't go here because of the red arrow. Can't put a 9 here, and the 9 can't be here either. So the 9 is locked into one of those squares, which means it's in one of these 3 positions in this box. Now, 2 of these positions are on the palindrome, so I'm going to check that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So is there a way of ruling out a 9 from either of these squares? Don't see how to do it. Oh, except that one can't be a 9 anyway because of the red arrow. Sorry, I should have seen that before. So the 9 is in one of these 2 positions. But look at this here. Where can a 9 go in this box? Now, this is interesting. This is interesting. So, the 9 could go into this position, or it's in this position or one of these positions. They're the only options. But this square is on the palindrome, and look, I think it interrupts that position. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this square here is not a 9. Therefore, the 9 is in one of those positions, or one of the other squares that I highlighted. I think it was those. And that means that the 9s are in the same columns, column 8 and column 9, in these 2 boxes. So where are we going to put a 9? Down column 7. Can't be in these squares, can't be in these squares, must be in one of these 3 positions. The arrow here rules out this one, so it must be on the palindrome. And down here, I'm pretty sure this one is not, this one is impossible. Because, let's double check it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, this can't be a 9 because of the red arrow. So this is not right. This is correct, and therefore this is correct. And we've made a little bit of progress. So now we've made a little bit of progress, but not enough progress to actually be useful. Right, okay, so well, let's look at this box. Given that we've got a 9 here, where can the 8 go? Now the 8 could go here, that's valid. It could go here, that's valid, but I don't think it can go anywhere else. If it goes here, this would have to be a 9, that doesn't work. If it goes here, we have to put a number between an 8 and a 9 into this square, and that's impossible. So there's only 2 positions for the 8 in this box down here. Now, can we rule out the 8 from these 3 squares? Yes, we can, because look, an 8 in either of these 2 positions forces a 9 here, that's impossible. An 8 here is impossible because of the red arrows, so the 8 is down there somewhere, marrying up with the rows it's appearing with over here, so the 8 is in one of these 2 squares. Now it would be really good if this just can't be an 8 because of the red arrow. So this is an 8. Oops, that's an 8 there. And so what is that telling us? It's ruling out an 8 from these 2 squares. Ah, now look, this is really clever, I think. Let's look down here at what cannot be 8s due to the palindrome. You can see this square, this square, this square, this square, this square, and this square all cannot be 8s. Now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12 cannot, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 cannot be 8s. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. None of those squares can be 8s. And is that good? Now let me just look at this. So if we look at this box, these squares can't be 8s because of the 8 here. These 2 can't be 8s because then I'd have to put a 9 above them, and I can't. This can't be an 8 because I can't have 2 numbers bigger than an 8. So the 8 is in one of these 2 squares. So the 8 is in one of those 2 positions, which means there's an 8 in one of these 3 positions. I really wish there was a way of disambiguating this. Or am I missing something obvious? Don't know. Let's just go through it again in terms of 1, 2, all of the positions that can't be 8s along the palindrome, because there were a lot of them. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So actually all of, I'm going to highlight these. This can't be an 8. Let me just stare at this for a moment. Well, this can't be an 8 because then this would have to be a 9. That's not an 8. Neither of these squares can be 8s because then I'd have to put a 9 above them, and I can't. Ooh, so this is an 8. Wow, which means this is an 8. this can't be an 8 now, because 1, 2, this is the third number on the palindrome, and it sees that square. 1, 2, 3. This is not an 8. This is an 8, therefore this is a 9. And eight. Oh, come on, there must be something more I can do with this. 8s. Yes, there is. Let's look up here. Where can an 8 go in this box? Can't go in those squares, can't go in these squares, can't go in either of those squares, because if I put it in either of these squares, I have to put a 9 in the row, and the 9 is not in the row. So the 8 is in one of those squares, which means there's an 8 in one of these two. Ah, yes, there's an 8 in one of these two positions over here. But look, if I put an 8 here, this has to be a 9 because of the arrow, and it can't be. So the 8 goes there, which means there's an 8 in one of these three squares. Now, that's interesting as well, look, because this can't be an 8, because this square, that would imply there's an 8 here because of the palindrome, and there can't be. So the 8 is in, right, so the 8s, look, marry up in rows 4 and row 6. So if this is an 8 in the finished solution, this will be an 8. And the only other situation that could exist is that this is an 8 and this is an 8. Either way, there's no 8s in any of those squares in this box. So the 8 is in one of these two cells. Now this, what is this? Is it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Ah, that one cannot be an 8, because if this is an 8, this has to be an 8, and it can't be. So this is an 8, which means this is an 8. The 9 is forced over here, which means this is a 9 down here. Ah, now this is interesting. So here I can't put a 9 into this square, because if I do, this will be 8, 9. Whatever I put in here will be lower than an 8 or a 9, and this will be a sequence and would require this to be an arrow. So this is the 9. This can't be a 9. Ah, that has to be a 9 there because of the green arrow. That means there's an 8, 9 pair, look, in this box. And a 9 in one of those two squares as well. I might have to get rid of some of this highlighting now, because this highlighting was for the 8s and I don't think we now need it. So let's get rid of all that and start to think again. So now, what do we do next? So maybe I have to look at 7s. Where can a 7 go? 7 is very unrestricted in this box. Well, oh, well, 7 can't go in this square, so this... Ah, yeah, there is something with 7s. Look, the 7 can't be in this square, so the 7 is in one of those squares in this box here. Now look here, can any of those squares be a 7? Well, neither of those can be a 7, because that would require an 8 or a 9 in the row, and this can't be a 7 because of the red arrow. So the 7 in this box is also like this. So the 7 in this box up here must be in one of those three positions, and we have a green arrow. So in fact, I think that's a 7. And oh, well, that's on the palindrome. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is a 7. And sorry about saying and. This is my this is me doing a bluff of trying to persuade you I'm about to say something profound when actually I'm buying for time. I haven't got anything profound. Well, this square is a bit restricted because we've got... Yeah, this is an interesting square because you've got 2 arrows pointing at it. So this can't be a small number because if I put a 4 into this square, I'd have to have 2 numbers lower than a 4 here and 2 numbers lower than a 4 here. That's not possible. So you can see immediately the minimum value for this square is a 5, and it can't be bigger than a 6 because there's already 7, 8, 9 in the row. So this is a 5 or a 6, which means this is a 5 or a 6 because of the palindrome, which means that oh, yes. Oh, in fact, I've been a bit slow here again. I should have spotted this before. It's because I'm not used to Rossini logic. Look at these 5 columns here. Now, what I should have picked up on is there can't be a 1 in any of those squares because they are in the centre of their respective arrows. So there's no 1 in any of those squares. And we've got green arrows on the left, so this isn't a 1 because these have to be strictly ascending. This isn't a 1, this isn't a 1, so this is a 1. And that matters because of this square now. Because now, in fact, it matters a few different ways looking at this. Now this, we can't have 1, 2, 3 and 4 into those squares because we've already got a 1 in the box. So these must be 2, 3, 4 and 5. So this has to be a 6. Which makes this a 6. These squares are 2, 3, 4 and 5. This can't be a 5, that can't be a 5, this can't be a 2, this can't be a 2, this has to be a 7. And that means there's a 7 in one of these squares. It must be there because of the arrow. 7 in one of those 3 squares. Let me just stare at this for a second. 2, 3. Oh, actually, look, the 1 is nice. Where can a 1 go in this box? Can't go here. Can't go here because of the green arrow. It can't go here because of the red arrow, so this is a 1. Which means there's a 1 on the palindrome in this box. Now, what does that mean? Oh, in fact, look, the 1 here, these 2 green arrows mean one of these 2 squares is a 1. Could be a 1, I think. I need to work out what the equivalent of these 2 arrows is, or these 2 cells on the palindrome. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 and 12. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 9, 10, 11. So 12, which is this one, is the equivalent of that square which sees that 1. So this is not a 1, this is the 1, and this is the 1, and therefore this is the 1. Oh, and now we're starting to make progress again. 1's here and here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That looks like it. Oh no, that can't be a 1 because of this square. So this is the one. The one is in one of these two positions. But you can see that we've got green arrows, so it must be in that square, again on the palindrome. So this is a 1. What a beautiful, beautiful puzzle this is. Good grief. Right, so now what do we do? What do we do? Well, I'll tell you what we do. We use this 7. This 7 sees those 3 squares. Now, I can't put a 7 into this square, because if I do, this square would have to lie between a 1 and a 7, and there should be an arrow here, and there isn't. So these aren't 7, this isn't 7, this can't be a 7 because this is a green arrow, so I think that has to be a 7. Which means this is a 7 because this can't be a 7. Which means one of these 2 squares is a 7, this one can't be a 7 because of the red arrow. And that 7 up there, in fact. 6 here forces a 6 into one of those squares. So there's a 6 in one of those 3 positions here. Now, can we deduce anything about that? This equivalent is this point here, if I remember rightly, so that could still be a 7, which is fine with the absence of an arrow down here, so that's no use. Hang on. In this row, we need to put a 2, 3, 4 and a 5. And we have an arrow here. So, yes, so neither of those 2 squares could be a 2. If I put a 2 in either of these 2 squares, I have to put a 1 in the row, and I can't do that. So the 2 is in one of those squares. Therefore, this square is not a 2. And there's only one position left for a 2, look. It must be there. Which means there's a 2 along here in this row. This can't be a 2, because if I put a 2 here, I need an arrow outside the grid. This would have to be 1, 2, and the number bigger than a 2. Two here would force a 2 here. That looks okay. 2 here. 2 here doesn't work for a different reason. I need this to be strictly increasing. So if I put a 2 here, this has to be a 1, and it can't be. So that's not a 2. This is a 2, which is on. Therefore, this is a 2. So this is not a 2. And 2. Now this is interesting. I can't put the 2 here in this box. If I put the 2 here, I'd need an arrow here because this would be 2 and then a 3, 4 or a 5 and then a 6. So the 2 is either in that position or that position, which means one of these 3 squares is a 2. Oh, in fact, one of these 2 squares is a 2. Both on the palindrome. Now, can we rule out either of these? Oh, we don't have to. Look, we've got a 2 here and a 2 in one of those squares. So there must be a 2 in this position, in this box. Therefore, there's a 2 in one of those 2 squares. Now, do these correspond? 1. Oh no, they don't correspond. This can't be a 2 anymore because that's the equivalent of that square, and that sees that 2. So this is the 2. 1, 2, 3, the 5th position. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the 2. This is not a 2. And therefore, oh, that's nice. Now this is a 2, which means this is a 9. 9, 8, 8. And right, now look up here. This can't be a 2 anymore, so this can't be a 3 because of the green arrow. And now, where can we put a 3 in this column? We can't put a 3 here, because if we do, whatever we put in here would require there to be an arrow outside the grid. We can't put a 3 here, because that would require a 1 or a 2 here, which is impossible. So this is a 3. Which means this must be a 2 because it can't be a 1. Which means this is a 2 down that side, look. I think we've done all the 2s now. This must be a 4 or a 5. This must be a 4 or a 5. This is on the palindrome, and its equivalent is this square. So this is a 4 or a 5. Now this is on the palindrome as well, and this is equivalent of this square, so this is a 3. This is not a 3, that's nice, look, 4, 5 pair, so this is a 3. So this square must be a 4 or a 5. This must be a 4 or a 5. 7 means that's not a 7. And can we go further than that? There must be a 3 in one of these squares. And this is interesting. I can't put a 3 in this square, because if I do, this will have to be an arrow, because this will have to be bigger than a 3. So the 3 must be there. So these two squares must be 4 and 5 to complete the column. And sorry about this. This is, as I say, I am no expert on this form of Sudoku, as no doubt you've all realised. So now this can't be a 3, otherwise that's going to break the red arrow there. So the 3 is in one of these two squares. Four, 5. 5, 3, 4, 5. 4, 5, 6 down here. You can, that's interesting. This square can't be a 4 because that would require an arrow here. And this square can't be a 6 now, because if I make this square a 6, this has to be a 5, and this would be an arithmetic sequence and require an arrow. So this is a 6. That's nice, because that makes these squares a 3, 6, 7 triple, which makes these two squares a 4, 5 pair. And this can't be a 6 now because of the arrow. So this has to be the 3. These two squares are a 6, 7 pair. Oh blow. I thought I was going to be enough to give me a bit more progress. So these squares here are 4, 5 and 6 in some order. Except this is not 6. So if this is a 4, we've got a problem, because that will place a 5 here and need an arrow. Apologies if you're all seeing the next step. 2, 3. This can't be, this has to be 3, 4 or 5. It can't be 6 because otherwise I can't make this increase. So the 6 is in either this square or this square. Now, am I right in thinking now that this can never be a 5? My thinking is, if this is a 5, I can see I've got to put a 6 in one of these two squares. But that means that whatever other number I put into the other square, this will either form an increasing or decreasing sequence. So in fact, this has to be a 4. Which means this is a 5 down here, that's a 4, that's a 5, that's on the palindrome. I think it's equivalent with that one. Which makes this a 4 and this a 5, assuming I haven't made a boo-boo there. This square, whoa, I feel like I should have got that square before. That's a 6, look, which means this is a 6. This has to be a 5 now. 4, 5, 4, 4, which is on the palindrome, so there we go with a 4 here. Now let's just make sure we don't make a boo-boo here. I'm going to have to put a 5 into one of these squares, aren't I? Otherwise it's always going to be 3, 4, 6, and the same logic I mentioned before is going to be a problem. So this is the 3. That means there's a 3 in one of those squares, look, which makes this a 6, and that's on the palindrome. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, this is a 6. That resolves the 6, 7 at the bottom, plonks a 7 into one of those squares. This square is a 3 now, and you can see that is on the palindrome, so that's a 3. Yeah, that's working, I think. Now this should be a 5. These two squares, I still need, what do I need? Is it a 4? Which must go here. 4, 7, 7, 3. 6 here, and I think 5. Yes! What a puzzle! What a puzzle. I'm not unhappy with that. That is a remarkably long video. But wow. Wow. That was so much interesting logic. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I'd be very interested to hear how much I've missed on the journey, and how quickly I should have solved it. I suspect some of the experts out there may get that done in about half this time, but I'm talking through it at the same time. But do let me know. I really enjoyed it. I hope you did too. Back soon with another edition of Cracking the Cryptic, and Happy Christmas.